Hey, gun people. Going over this Border Patrol, and I saw their use of force handbook, so I figured I'd take a look at it and go over it. I remember this is the feds, and most police agencies have to go by Supreme Court rulings, but they each have state rulings. Because they're feds, they don't have to apply for it, but regular police officers have to know the feds rules and the states. So when you're working under feds, you only go by the feds. The states don't matter. Uh, so let's take a look at the federal use of force policy. People like go, well, he violated policy and he should know and he needs more training. This is one policy, people, 117 pages. One policy just on the use of force. So let's kind of just go through here and see. You'll see a lot of things on use of force that cops use. If you know these, if you get in a use of force situation, these are the same cases that are going to justify you using force, even though most of them apply to cops. Tennessee versus Garner, old case, shot a guy in the back jumping a fence. He was a teen, juvenile, and everybody raised hell, so they changed the law and said you can't shoot people in the back anymore. If anybody remembers the old show, what was it? When a bell rings, the angel gets his wings. Oh, hell, I can't think of the show. But the guy comes out of the bar and he punches the cop and runs off. The cop pulls the gun and shoots at him. So before Tennessee versus Garner, you could go ahead and shoot somebody for running. Now, people would have you believe that people are getting shot today for running, and they're not. But I digress. Let me try to stay on this policy here. So they're authorized agents derived from constitutional law interpreted by the federal courts, Graham versus Connor and Tennessee versus Garner. Authorized agents, objectively reasonable force, objectively reasonable. Remember that reasonable term is always there. That's why I try to get people to concentrate. Intent, fear, protection of yourself or others. Is it reasonable when necessary to carry out their law enforcement duties? The reasonable, particularly use force based on totality of circumstances. There's that term. You always hear me saying it, totality. You can't take one fact by itself. It has to be all those things known to the officer at the time he uses force. It can't be things he found out later. I shoot a guy and later I found out he was a wanted murderer. I can't say, oh, well, it doesn't matter why I shot him. He was a wanted murderer. No, 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 no. When you use force, you must justify why you used it from what you knew and how you can articulate fear, protection of yourself or others. Okay, the officer or agent at the time of use of force weighs the actions of the officer or agent against the rights of the subject. Now, all this happens in less than a millisecond when you're deciding on whether to pull your gun and shoot somebody. On the rights of the subject in light of the circumstances surrounding the event. How many things are we talking about here? The event, things surrounding the event, circumstances, in light of the circumstances, the rights of the subject against the rights of against the agent. Oh, Jesus. Okay. Reasonableness will be judged from the perspective of a reasonable officer or agent on the scene rather than with 20/20 hindsight. The reason why they say that in just all use force policy is you can't go back later and go, well, what would you have done if you'd have known this? Or, well, you shot him, but did you know this? No, I didn't know that. So they can't use it. You can't use it to protect you that the guy was a wanted murderer. And they can't use it against you that the guy was a saint and, gave money to the church every week and volunteered his time. So none of that matters, only what you knew. Okay, the calculus of reasons embodies violence. Fact, law enforcement agents often split-second decisions in the circumstances that are tense, uncertain, rapidly evolving. You hear me talk about that phrase. Circumstances tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving. That was the Supreme Court that used that wording, so a lot of that wording has become kind of relevant when you use force and you're trying to evaluate what the guy did. Amount of force necessary in that particular situation. A use of force is necessary when reasonable required to carry out the authorized agent's duties given a situation considering totality of facts and circumstances of such particular situation. Oh yeah, I got that. Let me just program that to memory so I can figure that out before I shoot. A use of force, deadly force, is necessary when the officer or agent has a reasonable belief that the subject of such force poses an imminent danger of death or seriously bodily injury. Remember, I use that a lot. death, or seriously bodily injury. That's deadly force to the officer, agent, or another person. This is kind of like the meat and potatoes of using force. If you use force, you better know this. Use of deadly force is necessary. Poses imminent danger. Imminent is not so much important because if I go into school and I shoot up a bunch of kids and I'm running away from that school, I can shoot you in the back, even though there's no kids around you really can't hurt anybody. People be like, well, he was in the middle of a field and he wasn't a threat to anybody, therefore imminent danger was not there and you should not have shot him. Well, that's because you're an idiot. He's a fleeing felon. He's just killed people. If he gets away, he's going to kill other people. I can shoot him in the back. Rick, you can't shoot people in the back. That's not fair. It's not in law. It's against the Constitution. Well, that's because you're an idiot. All right. An authorized agent may have rapidly escalated or de-escalated through the force options depending on the totality of facts and circumstances of the particular situation. Let's see. Officer, do you remember when you read to use force and you signed a policy? Section 6? No. Well, here, let me refresh your recollection. An authorized agent may have to rapidly escalate or de-escalate through force options depending on the totality of facts, circumstances of that particular situation. Did you de-escalate? Well, see, it's so easy when people make all these complex rules that they get to enforce and question you and grill you later on, but yet you're supposed to know them, memorize them, and figure it out and check off each of these before you use force. It's just absolutely crazy, but I digress. That's why when I wrote policy, I wanted it simple, easy, broad, and guidelines, because there is no specific situation. See, what happens to these administrators, every time something happens, they want to come back to this policy and go, hey, man, we need to add a 7A, and we need to add a 8A and B, because this guy just wiggled out of this policy, and we don't want the next guy to wiggle out, so let's add 8A and B to stop the wiggle room. And then you just make the policy to where everybody violates it every day. It means nothing, and it only means something when they get caught and when the agency decides to enforce it. But let me try to stay on point here. All right. Based on intelligence circumstance, different officers, agents may have different responses, which may both be reasonable and necessary. What they're saying here is the courts have ruled that when an officer uses force, it's not based on the reasonable any officer. It's based on an officer with the same experience, education, totality of experience of the officer. Okay, me as a use of force instructor, a firearms instructor, I will be able to judge against a different standard than a rookie officer 6 months out of the academy. Somebody with 15 years will be judged different than somebody with 6 months, etc. So that's where that wording comes in. The level of force applied must reflect the totality of circumstances surrounding the situation, including the presence of imminent danger and the officer or agent of others. See, whoever wrote this is some freaking propeller head, freaking, I want to be smart. I want to make this long. I want to milk this so I don't have to really go out and do other police work. So let me make this sound like I'm really smart and important. Let me make it so difficult and so long that no agent will ever be able to comply, and we can always get somebody if we get them. If they're not a team player, if they don't go along with the rules and do what we tell them, we'll just get them for violating this policy because we made the policy so damn long and convoluted that no reasonable person could memorize this and go through this checklist before they actually use force. That ought to be your defense. But I digress. If feasible, and if to do so would not increase danger to the officer or agent and others, a verbal warning to submit to the authority of the officer or agent shall be given. When you use words like shall, that means you have to do it. If it said could be given, that means it's optional. When they say shall, they lock you in that if you do not give a verbal warning, you violated this policy because a policy said it shall be given. Then the onus goes back to you that you have to say, well, wait a minute. It says shall, but it says if feasible. I don't think it was feasible. Well, officer, you better justify why it wasn't feasible. You better convince us that it wasn't feasible. And guess what? We get to define feasible. Okay, so let's move on to others. Man, I'm telling you, man, I never hated policy. Working with different agencies, federal, state, local, everybody had different policies. When you go through all these policies, you're just like, what the hell? How does it? You know what? You do what you have to do to survive. You understand that I'm in fear of my life and I have to do what I have to do, and you hope the chips fall in your way. But remembering policy. Somebody wants to come out here and quote policy, whatever. You need to know it. You need to read it so you can figure out how to justify what you did when they call you on it. Okay, A, should have reasonable basis to believe that the subject can comprehend and comply with the warning. So now, not only do I have to do all this, here's what they're saying. You can't speak English. You have to make sure the guy speaks English if you give the warning in English. And if he doesn't understand English, you need to understand that. You need to say it in Spanish. And if he's from another country like Iran, then you need to have a reasonable basis that he can understand English. And if he doesn't understand English, well, it's your fault because you violated policy and you should have had a reasonable bias to believe that the subject could comprehend you. Officer, you're wrong. I mean, policy is just so easy. That's why when I see, huge articles, officer violated policy, I'm just like, who doesn't violate policy? You can hang that on anybody. All right, allow sufficient time between the warning and the use. Not only do I have to figure out if I can use policy under the totality of circumstances, was it reasonable, and can I use it? Now I have to figure out if the guy can understand me and say it in different languages. And then after I say it in different languages, I better allow sufficient time between the warning and the use of force. Well, officer, what's sufficient? Well, shit. He was running on me. He was 2 feet away. I thought sufficient was less than a half a second. I said it while I was pulling the trigger. Well, we don't think that's sufficient, officer. You know what? We're going to find you in violation of Section B of the policy. I'm trying to get you guys to understand what happens when cops get called in about violating policy. How unreasonable policy is, yet they use reasonable, the most primary word in policy. Following any incident involving use of force, authorized agents shall seek a medical attention for the person. Shall. Not maybe, not if, and, buts, or coconuts. You shall do it, or you're in violation of policy. Okay. If he claims to be injured. If he appears or claims, so that means anybody that has any contact with any border agent should claim to be injured, and they automatically get medical attention, or the officer is in violation of policy. Yeah, that's a great policy. Let's just give free medical on the border to everybody. Okay, objectively reasonable and the totality of circumstances. Let's make another paragraph about this so guys have to remember it so we can get them for violating something else we said. The reasonableness inquiry of application of force is objective 1. The question is whether the officer or agent's actions are objectively reasonable in the light of the totality of facts, circumstances confronting him or her without regarding to the underlying intent or motivation. The court's rule, it doesn't matter what your intent is. It matters, are you lawfully authorized to do what you want? So if I think you're a drug-using piece of crap teen gang member guy I don't like, and I want to pull you over. I follow you till you don't use a turn signal and I pull you over. My intent may be just to get in and harass you and detain you. Doesn't matter. The court says it doesn't matter what my intent is. It matters that I had a violation, you didn't use a turn signal, therefore I can legally stop you. Does not matter what my intent or motivation is. I think that's a very bad law, but that is the law. Don't be coming here hating on me because I'm telling you what it is. In determining whether used for a generally reasonless authorized agent must be careful. Gee, I don't have to be careful with all the other 14,000 things you already said. Agent must be careful to the totality of facts and circumstances of each particular case, including, so now we're going to list all the facts that I have to be objectively reasonable and make sure I determine whether the subject poses an imminent threat to safety and the officer or others. The severity of the crime at issue, meaning forcing your way across a border entry is not that severe because the liberals love it and they want you to come here so they can dilute the voting base, they can destroy American values, they can destroy America. So it's not that serious of a crime, so don't be using force just because somebody's crossing the border illegally. Even if he is a terrorist from a freaking known communist or a country that wants to destroy America, it doesn't matter. The severity of the crime is, you better remember that when you're using force, officers. I wish I was teaching this policy to these guys. I'd give them a reality check. They'd be like, what the hell? Whether the subject is actively resisting seizure or attempting to evade arrest by flight. So I have to consider that. So is he, let's see, the guy is running from me. Is he resisting seizure or is he attempting to evade arrest? Does that matter or is it different? To me, it doesn't freaking matter. But Section C says it does matter, so I better freaking evaluate it and determine it and think about it before I do any freaking thing. Let's see, whether the circumstances are tense, uncertain, rapidly evolving. So if it's calm or if it isn't tense and uncertainly rapidly evolving, or if I caused it to be tense because of my presence, and I caused it to be uncertain because I didn't know what language he spoke, or I caused it to be rapidly evolving because I gave him too many orders and he wasn't complying, then it's all my fault because I didn't understand and determine whatever. And I have to determine whether it's foreseeably risk of injury to involve the subject and others. Jesus Christ. All right, let's go to the next section because we got that one clear as mud. Let's see. 3, totality of circumstance refers to all factors existing in each individual case. All factors, not just things that you can remember or grasp or the most important factors. All factors, weather, temperature, whether the mother is breastfeeding, whether the person is under the influence of drugs or not under the influence of drugs, whether the person is little, small, big, whether the person has an injury, whether the person has crutches. All factors, in addition to those listed in B2. These factors must be, well, B2. Remember that B2? Let's give a quiz. Everybody repeat what was in B2. If you can't, you failed to learn the policy. You need more training. That's what all the idiots come here. Oh, that cop needs more training. It's not more training, you freaking idiots. All right, anyway, these factors may include but are not limited. Oh, that's great. So not only these, we can throw in other factors later when we're trying to hang you for violating policy. A, the training, mental attitude, age, size, strength of the officer or agent. So I got to figure out all my training, my mental attitude, my age, size, and strength. Okay, I got it. I'm figuring it all out. I'm going along as we go. I have to figure out circumstances of my training, moral attitude, age, strength, size of the subject. Now, somebody explain to me how I figure out what kind of training the subject has that I'm dealing with, and how I figure out what his mental attitude is, how I figure out his age. I can probably see his size, but how do I figure out his strength? Because I know little guys that are pretty strong, and I know big guys that are weak. But, Rick, it's policy. You should know it, and if you don't know it, you should have more training, and all cops are stupid. Okay, I got it. I'm just reading policy, people. Okay, I have to also consider the totaling factors, not limited to. Remember, these factors, not limited to, the weapon involved. Is the knife sharp? Is it pointed? Is it long enough to do damage? Is it just a small pocket knife, or is it a stabbing instrument? Is it a kitchen knife that they just happen to be carrying so they can eat their poor food while they're doing their long trek to break in and commit a violation to come into the country? Is it just for them to cook and eat food? Is it really a weapon, or is it simply to protect themselves from being raped and taken as a slave while they're traveling across because the Democrats invite them and give them free medical and food when they get here? What is the weapon? I have to be... Look, people, I'm trying to get you to understand what goes. Okay, I have to also remember limited, but not limited to, the presence of officers, agents, subjects, and bystanders. So if he's in a group, if they travel in a group of 100, if they're rushing the border, I have to figure that out. But not limited to. Environmental conditions. I have to figure out the environment. I wonder what the barometric pressure was when I arrested this person. Okay, let's see. All right, everybody got the policy so far? There's going to be a test at the end. This is what everybody wants to crack on cops all the time because they need more training. That's what we need, more training. You know what happens when you get more training? Policy gets bigger and thicker. I've seen policy books that are freaking the size of an encyclopedia, and you have to initial every page. It's like, are you kidding me? I got to remember all this every time I do anything? Yeah, that's right, Rick. And if you don't, you're stupid, and we'll hang you. All right, use of less lethal force. So we were talking about lethal force up there. Less lethal force is the force that is not, that should be capitalized. Who wrote this policy, freaking idiots? Is not likely to cause seriously bodily injury or death. So force that is likely must be deadly force. Therefore, if it's not likely, it is less lethal force. That's a little hint there. Any use of less lethal force must be both objectively reasonable and necessary in order to carry out the officer agent duty. Less lethal force may be used in situations where empty-handed techniques are not sufficient to control disorderly or violent subjects. Use of deadly force. I don't know what I guess we're just talking about force in general on the other one. D1. Use of deadly force. Deadly force, that force that likely to cause seriously bodily injury and or death. The Department of Homeland Security use of deadly force governs use of deadly force by all DHS employees. Number 3. See, this section was added because somebody was an employee and felt they didn't have to apply, So they go, you know what, we're going to make this policy to all DHS employees. Okay, so let's add that section. And this policy, most policy are updated like every 6 months. Some agencies only do it once a year, but every 6 months they're adding things. Rarely do they take away. It's like government. Government never shrinks. They're always adding and growing. That's the same with policy. Number 3, authorized agents must use deadly force only when necessary, that is, with the officer agent reasonable belief that the subject of such force poses an imminent danger and seriously physical and death to the officer agent or other person. A serious physical injury. Injury which creates a substantial risk of death, which causes serious disfigurement, seriously impairment of health, or serious loss of or impairment of the function of any bodily organ or structure, or involve seriously concussive impact to the head. Okay, everybody got that? Everybody knows what serious physical injury is? So, seriously impairment of health. Everybody define that for me. Because everybody's going to have a different definition of that. But you know who matters? Person who's enforcing policy. I don't think that was a serious impairment of health. Officer, I don't think you were authorized. Serious loss. What's serious loss? Well, I didn't think cutting his arm off was that serious. Well, we think it is serious. Okay. Impairment of function of any body. Well, I'm sorry I kicked him in the nuts and he can't have babies. I didn't think it was impair that body. Well, we think it did. Okay. Let's see here. Number 4. Remember, you got to remember all this before you do anything, people. Except in limited circumstances during air and marine. Okay, so except in limited circumstances. So in limited circumstances means if the department says it's okay, then we'll make it part of the limited circumstances. Otherwise, we get to size. Except in limited circumstances during air and marine enforcement operations. Okay, so we're making discharge of a firearm has a warning or signal is prohibited. So, is it prohibited or can you do it? Somebody answer me that. Is warning shots prohibited or can you do it? Read the sentence again. Except in limited circumstances during air and marine operations, discharge of firearms has a warning or signal is prohibited. Can you shoot warning shots? I say you can. Somebody's going to say you can only do it if you're in air or marine enforcement. So that means only in water or in the air. It says except in limited circumstances during air and marine. So what I think they're trying to say is only doing air and marine or is warning shots authorized. Otherwise is prohibited. Discharging a firearm at a person shall be done only with the intent of stopping that person from continuing the threatening behavior that justifies the use of deadly force. So this sentence could be used if a guy's running at me with a knife and he drops the knife, I can't shoot him. Even though he's still running at me, he may have another knife and he may have a gun. He's running at me at a knife. As soon as he drops the knife, I cannot shoot him. If you take that sentence right there. But we can't take that sentence. We have to remember everything we just read and everything we're going to read. Okay, we're already 23 minutes into this, and I hope everybody has a good, clear policy on what you can do when you're using deadly force or any force against poor immigrant trying to cross the country to a better life. Yeah, that's it. Except, let's see, deadly force. Number 5, is not authorized solely to prevent escape of a fleeing subject. That's against federal law. Because you can shoot somebody for fleeing, especially if they're a violent felon. So according to DHS, if somebody is running through the border with a suicide vest screaming, I'm going to blow up the building, they cannot shoot him because he is escaping. Okay. Deadly force is authorized. A fleeing subject is only authorized if there is probable cause to believe. Oh, so when he's fleeing, now let me get back to my probable cause in the middle of this rapidly evolving situation where I have to be reasonable, objectively reasonable, and under facts and circumstances, but not limited to. Let me get back to this now. When a subject is fleeing, I have to have probable cause to believe that the subject has inflicted or threatens to inflict seriously bodily injury or death to an officer or agent or another person, and, not or, and the escape of that subject poses an imminent threat of serious physical injury or death to the officer or agent at the time. Okay, everybody got that? That's good. Let's move on to the next little section because we're already at 25 minutes here Haven't even got through the damn policy. Authorized agents shall not discharge their firearms at the operator or a moving vehicle, vessel, aircraft, unless. Okay, so you say I shall not do it, and then you give me an unless. Unless deadly force is necessary. So most agencies, nobody allows you to shoot at objects. A lot of people say, why didn't they shoot the tires out of cars in pursuits? Most agencies, you don't shoot at objects, you shoot at people to stop a threat. That's basically what all use of force is. When you shoot at objects like tires and cars to disable them, what happens is if you miss, ricochet, hit, or kill somebody, they're going to say you were using deadly force on a tire and it resulted in somebody's death and you're screwed. So that's why when people say, why didn't the cop shoot the tires out? I'm like, man, that's because you're an idiot. You don't know the policy. Now you know the policy, so now you'll be smart. And you won't have to make stupid comments, and all my comments will be smart from now on. Yeah, okay. That is, when the officer or agent has a reasonable belief that the operator poses an imminent danger and serious physical injury and or death to officer or agent of another person. Such deadly force may include the moving vehicles aimed at officers. So if somebody's driving a deadly force vehicle at an officer, can you shoot? Or officer's presence, but would not include a moving vehicle merely fleeing. Oh, so if they're going at an officer, I can. If they're moving away, I can't. Unless the vehicle or the escape of the subject poses an imminent threat. How do I know that? Well, you should know that, Rick. If you know policy, you should know it. You cops are stupid. You just shoot people for no reason. Okay. Or serious physical injury or death to the officer or agent to another person. B, the hazard of an uncontrolled conveyance shall be taken into consideration prior to using deadly force. So now they're saying if you shoot a guy, even if he's going after agents, and you kill him, and the car runs into someone else, you violated policy because you did not consider and you did not take into consideration that when you shot the guy that was about to kill a bunch of officers, that he couldn't drive the car anymore. And now it's going to go on to hurt somebody else. So you're still wrong, officer. Gee, this policy is just clear as mud. I would love to work under these conditions. Firearms shall not be fired solely to disable motor vehicles, vessels, aircraft, other conveyance. The only, wait a minute, shall not. So you can't do it. Wait a minute. There's an exception. Remember the exception when you're in the middle of a life-threatening situation that's rapidly evolving, to remember to be reasonable. The only exception to that authorized officer or agent when conducting maritime law enforcement operations may use specifically authorized firearms or ammunitions to disable moving vessels or other maritime conveyances. That was clear. I got that. Deadly force may be directed against dangerous or vicious animals in self-defense or in defense of another person. Well, how do they determine dangerous and vicious animals? Because I've seen dogs wagging their freaking tails shot. Is someone in our federal government thinking when a dog wags his tail it makes him dangerous and vicious? Because that's what I see cops shooting dogs all the damn time for. I'm sorry, I digress. Deadly force may also be used to euthanize an animal that appears to be suffering or injured. They said animal. Ooh, unless they say except humans, that means I can put humans out of misery. Oh, somebody will be changing this policy after they see this video. Okay, in doing so, the authorized agent must be able to justify the use of force to prevent the animal from additional suffering and eliminate public health risks. Dude, there's a lot of people I think are public health risks that are suffering that I could put out of their misery. I might like this part of the policy. Rick, you can't do that. You know they're talking. You don't know anything when you're talking policy. The policy is only in its face. When you make policy, it's like a contract. Only what's in the borders matters. You can't add and say things otherwise later. So according to this, any animal, DHS can euthanize any animal that appears to be seriously injured or diseased. Man, there's a lot of those crossing the border. Why the hell ain't they freaking following policy on this one? Rick, you're just mean. You don't. Shut up, you freaking idiots. We're getting our country invaded and overrun, and you idiots are running around. Let them in. They'll vote liberal. We'll have more free stuff. Government will be great. Oh, the act of establishing a grip. Holy shit, they got a policy on how you draw your gun. The act of establishing a grip, drawing a weapon, or pointing a weapon does not constitute the use of deadly force. No shit. We got to put that in a policy? Jesus Christ, who you guys hiring out there? Okay, the CBP, that's, I think, Border Patrol, Customs, something, maybe, I don't know. I'm thinking it's Customs Border Patrol. The CBT, use of force, continue. Oh, here we go. All right. So now we have to make sure we go in the right order. Not only do we have to consider all this crap before we do it, we got to make sure we go in the right order and we eliminate things that we couldn't use, that we must have thought about before we use what we had to use, only under certain circumstances, but not limited to. All right, I got it. The CBT use force continuing to model of discovered levels force agents use to gain control over subjects. While it describes each different levels, it is not necessary to mechanically apply each and every step. They always put that in there saying it's not required, but if you don't do it, you better justify why you didn't do it. An authorized agent may have rapidly escalating or de-escalating through the continuing depending on the totality of facts and circumstances of a particular situation. Remember that, people, when you're using force. Remember everything I'm reading, you got to remember. Levels of subject behavior compliant is subject who is compliant/cooperative with an authorized agent control measure. That means they're compliant. A passive resistance is defined as a subject who is not believed to represent an immediate threat or flight risk and who is offering physical resistance to an authorized agent but is not cooperative. So he's not trying to flee or fight, but he's physically resisting. Okay, that's passive. Active resistance, a subject who offers physical or mechanical resistance to an authorized agent control. Oh, we got a 1 down here. Let's not make it simple. A type of active resistance, which the subject uses is a mechanical or other object resist the officer agent control efforts. The subject efforts is not directed toward the officer agent, but rather appears or intended to thwart the officer's agent's control efforts by physically securing or holding another object. Okay, everybody got that? Let's move on to the next one. Assaultive resistance. So we have this mechanical resistance. We have active resistance. We have mechanical resistance. Now we have assaultive resistance. Physical injury. A subject who is resistance causes or has the potential to cause physical injury to the officer, agent, others, or self. Oh, so if he's assaulting himself, I can use force. I got a problem with that. Okay, this is the first time I read this policy, by the way. I just opened it and decided I'd read it with you. When I read a policy, what goes through my mind. This includes the subject's attempts or his apparent attempt. So we have an attempt or an apparent attempt. What's apparent? Well, apparent is what the admin says was apparent and not what you say is apparent because you were wrong because they want to hang you because you violated it. That's what apparent intent means. When they use words that they don't define them clearly, that means they get to make the decision when they want to hang you or use a policy against you. Apparent attempt to make physical contact in another or to crowd or assault the officer or agent. Okay, we got D. Be a test on that. 6D, 1 paragraph D. Assaultive resistance. Seriously, a subject who resistance causes or has the potential to cause serious physical injury or death to an officer. That sounds like deadly force. All right, levels of officer agent response. So now we have to do the levels after we go through all the other things on whether or not we can do anything at all other than watching. You wonder why cops don't do anything. This is why. This is a perfect example on why. Levels of officer response, cooperative controls, measures. Individual verbal commands used to maintain control over compliance. Contact controls, physical measures taken to a verbal commands officers present is not effective in gaining compliance. Contact controls may include measures such as strategic positioning, escort holds, joint manipulation, immobilizing, touch pressure points. Now, let me take a sip of coffee here. You guys keep reading. Compliance techniques. Actions taken when the subject is actively resisting. Which was that? Can somebody quickly define what was actively? Remember what they did in that? What was actively? Okay, whatever. The efforts of the officer or agent to establish and maintain control. Examples of compliance techniques include to use the OC spray. Oh, they must have talked to ASP. Oh, ASP must be, he's going to be saying, see, even the federal government says OC spray is good, so it must be right. Freaking idiot. He watched a lot of videos. He knows what he's doing. Stunning techniques, takedowns, joint manipulations, and the use of electronic control weapons. ECW. Remember these ECWs and all these initials because we'll be using them later too. Defensive tactics. Actions taken when a subject has either assaulted or officer agents when displaying the willingness and intent to do so. Examples of defensive tactics are concentrated to strikes involving the use of empty-handed techniques, the use of body parts such as, bottom fist, closed fist, open fist, finger to the eyes, On the collapsible straight baton, CSB. Remember CSB, it's not the CBP or the OBP or the ABC, it's the CBP and the ECW. Remember that? Okay. Deadly force actions taken when authorized by the agents has reasonable belief that the subject and the use of force poses an imminent danger of the physical injury and or death to the officer, agent, or another person. We had to add that in again. Hope everybody's understanding this policy because I'm reading it and we're going through it line by line. So as soon as we're done, everybody should know the policy and should know what to do. Okay. Use of force, use of safe tactics. Oh, there must be use of unsafe tactics. Use of safe tactics. Authorized agents should seek to employ enforcement tactics. Should. Remember, before they were using shall, saying they must. Now they're saying should. So you have a little wiggle room in this area. Enforcement tactics and techniques that effectively bring an incident under control while promoting the safety. So now I have to promote the safety when I'm trying to save my freaking life. I got it. Promoting safety to the officer, agent, and public, minimizing the risk of for an unintended injury and property damage. Now we're talking about property damage. Okay. Except, we got an exception, except when otherwise required by inspectors of other operations, authorized agents should, not shall, avoid standing directly in front of or behind a subject vehicle. Gee, I wonder why they don't want standing in front or behind. They got to put that in a policy. Okay, I can kind of figure that out. Hopefully you can too. Officers' agents should not place themselves in the path of a moving vehicle and use their body to block a vehicle. Okay, CHP needs to put this in their damn policy. Freaking idiot. Always jumping in front of moving cars and killing people. He tried to run me over because I jumped in front of his car. Well, you're a freaking idiot. All right, so they're saying don't jump in the path of moving vehicles. I got it. Now it's against policy if you do it. But it's not really against policy because they said should. If they put shall, then it would be against policy and officers wouldn't do it. But because they put should not, if an officer does it, it's not technically against policy because we didn't make it shall not. See how words matter? Authorized agents should, whenever reasonable, avoid placing themselves in a position where they have no alternative but to use deadly force. That's another section the CHP should probably adopt. Authorized agents shall not discharge their firearms in response to thrown or launch projectiles unless, okay, so they shall not. You can't shoot somebody for throwing things at you. That's what they want you to remember. Unless the officer agent has reasonable belief. You better be reasonable, and you better be able to justify that belief was reasonable based on the totality of circumstances, but not limited to include the size and nature of the projectile. So when somebody throws something at me, I got to figure out the size and the nature. I got to figure out if it's in a danger, and by that time it's hit me in my head or the axe is stuck in my head. But you know what? At least I didn't violate policy because the first part says I shall not discharge my firearm when an axe is flying at my head unless I determine the totality of circumstances that the size and the nature of the projectile poses a imminent danger of seriously physical injury in our body. Oh, Jesus Christ. I'm making this complicated, people, because I want you to try and understand what a cop goes through every time he goes out there and acts. This is one policy that he has to abide by. Officers and agents may be able to obtain a tactical advantage. We're using may, not should, not shall. May be able to be a tactical advantage in these situations through measures such as seeking cover distance of themselves immediately. So basically run and hide. That's kind of what they tell you to do when they take your guns, and then when bad guys keep their guns and shoot at you, the government always says run and hide. This is the run and hide policy. That should be the heading. The run and hide policy for our officers. Okay. All right. DHS commitment, non-discriminatory law enforcement and screening activities. Oh, we have to make sure we're not discriminating against the people trying to kill us and break the law and come in our country that we know nothing about, but we're supposed to know their background, their size, and their training in defense and what they can use it. We have to evaluate all that, but can't be discriminatory. All right, I got it. DHS commitment to they have such a commitment. Aren't we a great country? Yeah, okay. Law enforcement and screening activity statement. Let's see. Let me go down here because that's just going to be operation guidelines, administrative, authorized agents, authority to carry firearms. Okay, so here's where we get these guys carrying guns. For the purpose of this handbook, the term officer agents includes CBP officers, Border Patrol agents, Air and Marine officers and agents, internal affairs, special agents, and investigators. Who the hell? Wouldn't it be easier just to say who it doesn't plain to? Oh, wait a minute. Other qualified CBP personnel as designated by the assistant commissioner, meaning assistant commissioner can say anybody in CBP, he can say you can carry a gun. and the operation components of the Chief, Office of the Border Patrol, hereinafter referred to as Assistant Commissioner, or the AC. Remember the BCC and the ACC and the BDDB? And the Commissioner of the Director of the UFCE. Remember that? UCAFE, the OC spray. A component, an assistant director, the AC, may request an individual designated by submitting written justification requesting that designate. Okay, so this goes into why the commissioner and how he determines who can carry a gun. All such personnel are required in accordance to the requirement of Chapter 8 to demonstrate their proficiency of such an CBP firearm that they are issued. Okay, got to go to the range, go through the motions, throw lead down range. Okay, don't have to hit anything, but let's see. Authority of the Carry Cbp issued firearms. The authority of CBP firearm federal law to carry firearms. Authorized agents must be designated to carry a firearm. Individual class be issued a badge by the CBP. Has successfully completed a basic law enforcement training requirement. Maintain proficiency with that weapon. Must meet all requirements and standards set forth by this handbook. Okay. Issue. Authorized agents required handgun duty hours while performing their duties with the operation circumstances of firearm. Only those firearms listed in the UCECAFEE authorized agents list specifically to the AC of the opponent may be carried on duty. Authorized agents may be authorized to carry personal weapons. Authorized agents are not. I always put not capitalized when I was writing policy because I don't. Sometimes you'll skim over something and you'll misread it. Are not authorized to carry any personal armed firearms while on duty. Well, that's kind of BS. I don't like that either. Let's see. In threatening emergency situation, authorized agents are authorized to use any available weapon in a manner that is reasonable and necessary. So what they're saying here is, if you remember during the LA riots, or maybe it was the LA bank robbery where the guys had AKs and they were beating the shit out of the cops ran into a gun store, seized weapons from the gun owner, got a 30-06, a long power rifle, and started shooting at the guy with long rifles. That was before cops carried long guns. They only had handguns and shotguns. So most cops, they were outgunned, so they went into gun stores and grabbed guns off the shelf. This policy pretty much says, yeah, you can do that. So if a guy comes across the border with a bazooka, I don't know if some of you know what a bazooka is. Let's say a law, an anti-tank weapon, a shoulder-fired missile. So for the people that just play video games. If a person comes across the border with a shoulder-fired missile and is going to use it against you, but you shoot him and kill him, it is okay for you to pick up that weapon and use it against the mass people who are coming because you're in fear of your life, because under the totality of circumstances, you were fear and you were not limited to, but you considered that in a group. They had enough training to overpower you and kill you, therefore you shot them with the shoulder-fired missile weapon. And I'd be quoting this policy when I did it. But I digress. Let's move on. All right. Authorized agents carry issued. Authorized agents, when carrying issued firearms, are required to carry their badge. Writing, yeah. Everybody's ID card, ammunition. Only approved ammunition. You can't be putting, loading your hollow points with mercury and putting candle wax over the top. Let's see. When uniformed officer duty, carry a minimum of 2 full loads. So they're telling you how much you have to carry. Shall be issued only one primary handgun based upon availability. Wow. If it's not available, you're just out there with no gun. How about that? Man, that's a great policy. Shall not be issued more than 2 handguns without concurrence of the AC Operation Command Director. Dude, I issued guys 3, 4. I mean, when I was handing out guns, I didn't give a shit. If you wanted a gun to defend yourself, if you wanted a small Glock for your ankle, you got a small Glock. You want a medium for when you're off duty, you got a medium. If you want a full size for on duty, you got a full size. If you want a shotgun, you got a shotgun. If you want an AR, you got an AR. And if you want an MP5, you got an MP5. And that's the way me and Lieutenant, who issued, when we issued guns out, I didn't want all this restriction bullshit. Now, obviously, you had to qualify. The more weapons you have, the more you have to qualify with, and it raised our budget because we needed more to buy ammo. But you know what? Why are you limiting officers to limited handguns to protect themselves? Next thing you'll be saying they can't carry a knife. I haven't got that part of policy. Maybe that's in here. Except herein, authorized agents only one handgun on their person at a time. So I can't carry a backup gun. That's good to know. Hey, all you people coming across, make sure in your training to infiltrate the United States of America that once you get the one handgun from the officer, they're against policy. They only have one gun. So all you got to do is get rid of that one gun, and they can't carry anything else. That's a great policy. Shit, CNN won't be running that. Let's see. Based on the duty assignment necessary by the operation, come on, based on blah 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 blah. Only authorized agents. Remember, this is a one policy, people. You got to know it. Flying armed on commercial. Authorized agents may carry their issued firearm in the cabin of the commercial aircraft in accordance regulation. Wow, you got to lock your gun in cabin? We didn't. We carried our gun on us when we were flying. If it was physical, each CBP issued firearm while traveling on board commercial must be in compliance. CBP approved law enforcement operation flying while armed training course. We did have to go through that course. Anybody that flies on an airplane, if you're armed, before you can fly armed on an aircraft, you have to go through the flying armed training course, which is a total freaking joke. It tells you don't shoot out the freaking windows. Be aware of your background, and there's a lot of people in there, so you probably shouldn't shoot, even though you got a gun. That I just gave you the freaking flying armed training course. Let's see. The course will be readily available to all officer agents. Okay. Unauthorized agents traveling aboard. I'm at 45 minutes. Armed must keep their issued firearm concealed and out of view. Oh, they have to be concealed. Okay. Either person's immediate reach on the person, if officer is agent uniform, not agent. See, by saying it must be concealed, now you can violate policy if your jacket gets caught in a seatbelt and somebody sees your gun, because therefore it is concealed and you're in violation of policy. So all you people who see a border agent, you want to cause problems and you want to attack, all you little First Amendment auditors, run around and videotape an agent in plain clothes aboard an aircraft, and if you can get a picture of his gun, it's not concealed. He violated policy and you can cause hell. Okay, on the person, that's why it's a bad policy. You don't want to make policy where people can run around and restrict you. That's why most agencies say cops don't have to wear their seatbelt when they're getting out of the car, because we had guys coming up to us because we took our seatbelts off before we rolled up to a hot incident, so we didn't have to deal with it in the middle of a fight or some guy trying to get in or shooting at us. So all cops usually take their seatbelts off a block or around the corner before they pull up to an incident. Well, we had idiots running around, dude, citizen arrest, citizen arrest. He didn't have his seatbelt on. I want him arrested. In California, you can arrest somebody for an infraction, and a cop has to write him a ticket because you say, I saw him do a violation. I want to issue him a ticket, and you sign the ticket. So they had to make sure. Now the law in California is cops don't have to wear seatbelts. Rick, that's not fair. We got to wear them. No shit, it's not fair, because government will always enforce laws on you and make themselves exempt, which is why a lot of government is bad. More government is always bad. More government power is always bad. And you idiots voting for the left-wing socialism are just voting for more government, more rules. I'm sorry, I digress. Let's see. No officer place a weapon in overhead storage. Obviously, that was added because some dummy went in there and go, I don't want to carry this damn gun on my side. Somebody might see it and make a complaint, so I'll just put it in my bag and I'll throw my bag in overhead storage, and I don't have to worry about anybody seeing it. Well, somebody got caught, somebody left the bag, some stewardess grabbed the bag out, the gun fell out, everybody panicked, and now we have to add in here the idiot clause, whatever his name was, we'll call him Carl, the Carl clause. Yo, dummies, don't put your gun in the overhead storage bin. That's how that got in there, people. I'm telling you how policy gets updated. People be like, that doesn't happen, Rick. It does happen. I'm telling you. You think I'm making shit up when it sounds crazy? That's freaking government. You don't have to make shit up. It is crazy. Under no circumstance shall an authorized agent releases his handgun to the pilot or any member of the flight crew, or allow his weapon to be stored in a crew compartment. And some pilots will say, I don't want a gun on here, so you either give me the gun or you get off my plane, and then it's up to you. Some agencies will say, give them the gun, you got to fly. Some agencies will say, hell, I ain't giving up my gun. No pilot ever took my gun from me. But most pilots are pretty cool. They meet you, they talk to you, they see that you don't look like a freaking idiot, and they usually don't mess with it. But some pilots be like, you know what? I don't want you flying on my aircraft. Get off. Okay. Any officer agents directed to anyone to check their handgun, the officer agent should request assistance from the appropriate security officials in order to resolve the issue. First, the airport ground security coordinator, TSA. What that means is these guys, TSA, other federal agencies, are going to come and say, hey, under federal law, he can hire a gun. That's how they're going to dispute it. He's the feds. We're the feds. We're going to take the feds' side. You're wrong. Shut the hell up. He's carrying his gun. That's kind of what that paragraph means. Any officer agent who has been denied boarding shall notify their immediate supervisor at the earliest practical time a written report. And see this earliest practical time? I've seen guys get jammed up on this because they drove home, it didn't have a cell phone, or didn't call until they got home, And supervisor was pissed. They didn't call him from the airport because he was going to tell him, and that's why the cop waited till he got home. He was going to tell him, "Don't leave, stay there. I'm on my way." So now the cop's flying back. He wants to get home. He don't want to sit there and argue. He'll call him when he gets home, so the supervisor can't say, "Don't leave the airport. I'm going to call so and so. This is bullshit. Stay there." So he calls him when he gets home. What do? Dude, you violated policy. You did not call us at the earliest time when you got off the plane. You waited to get home. That shows poor judgment, lack of judgment, and we need to document that because later on we'll hold it over your head when once you do something illegal. And if you're not a team player, then we'll use that against you to fire you. Let's see. Authorized agents are prohibited from consuming alcohol beverages while carrying a gun. Okay, that's pretty common for most policy, except in San Francisco. San Francisco, I think cops are still allowed to have 2 beers with their lunch while they're armed and working. And unless they've changed it recently, that used to be the policy when I was working in San Francisco. Let's see. In cases, the consumption of alcohol beverages shall be limited to the amount that... What? In these cases, what did I miss here? Let me go back. Authorized agents are prohibited from consuming alcohol. How can you make it not under the influence if it's prohibited? While carrying a weapon. Except... Wow. See, I scanned right through that. Except when engaged in authorized... undercover activities. Necessary... Okay. I got it. That's cool. Yeah, if you're undercover, you can drink. And you're still armed. I'm okay with that. But you can't drink more than the amount to impair the officer's judgment. Yeah, well, okay, whatever. Authorized agents shall not carry a firearm while taking medication that impairs their judgment and or the safety care. Okay, I took an aspirin. I can't go on the border today. I need a day off. That's great. Let's see. Revocation authorized. The authority of the CBP issued firearm may be temporary or permanently revoked. This gives them authority to spank you when you do something they don't like. Give us your gun. Give us your badge. We're going to revoke. I'm not going to read all that. Evidence of serious breaches. Yeah, what serious breaches? I told the captain he was a freaking idiot. That's a serious breach. Let's see. Domestic violence. Authorized to carry. It is responsibility of armed CBP employee who is arrested for or charged with a crime of domestic violence to promptly report their arrest and charge to the supervisor. So they had guys working that were facing charges, but they didn't tell their agencies because they live out of their agencies or in a different county, and they didn't find out about it, so they were carrying a gun unlawfully. So they go, you know what, we need to put this in policy. So now if they don't tell us, then we can charge them with not telling us. Let's see. During the period of pending disposition, domestic violence felony, blah, 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 appropriate CBP employees shall not be permitted to possess firearms. So basically you get on the no gun list if you get charged with a DUI. So if your wife really gets pissed off at you or your girlfriend, she can say, you know what, if you don't do this, I'm going to cause you to lose your job and you can't carry a gun because I'll just say you hit me. And then I'll say that you did domestic violence and I know you can't carry a gun. So buy me that new car and buy me that new dress or I'll ruin your life. Rick, that doesn't happen. Yeah, okay. Well, you're a freaking idiot if you don't think that happens. All right, protective orders. That's basically if you get a protective order, then you can't carry a gun because you can't carry a gun while you're under, if you're public, let's see. Personal owned firearms off duty. Nothing in this handbook shall be construed as to interfering with the rights that authorized agents may have as a private citizen to carry personal armed firearms off duty for personal use. That's good. Authorized agent must comply with proper federal, state, and local laws when exercising such rights. Okay, that's good. Some agencies will say, you know what? We don't care. When you're on or off duty, you fall under our policy, and you will abide by our rules. Let's see. Responsible officials, approving officials. I don't really care about approving officials. Government cares. There's always a policy. Always a policy. I don't even know what freaking... We're only on chapter 3. How many freaking chapters? Guidelines for you following the use of deadly force. Good grief. We're at 53 minutes. I'll put a link to this. You can go to it. Like I said, I'm on page 23 of 117. It took me an hour, and I hope it's clear as mud, and I hope you understand now. When you see some officer charged with violating policy, gee, that's a hard crime. That's like saying we're going to charge you with violating the Use of Air Act. You were breathing, and you unlawfully used air. I mean, it's just freaking crazy. Anyway, I'll give you a little insight. If you want to read it, I'll put a link to it, and we'll end it there.